many concepts you need to know actually. Usually for loop requires initializer and for loop requires a condition and for loop requires a counter. If anyone asks, like, is it conditions, is it mandatory that for loop should use a counter, for loop should use an condition and iterator, generally technically speaking here. So when you are working with the for loop, usually currently you see here, so it is handling all those values and displaying the values and printing the values. So 1 to 10 values are printed. Okay. Now generally in interviews, sometimes to test you know perfectly logically everything correctly or not, so they will ask you, so just to test your programming skills, they will ask you, can we define a for loop so without initialization? Can we define a for loop without initialization? That is the question. Can you configure a for loop without initialization? Or can we define a for loop without condition or for loop without counter, like that? Remember, so generally in for loop, all three are optional. All three are optional. But you need to keep the definition for them. All declaration must be defined. Here you see, in this case, so initializer is not defined. You can give the initializer above where I is equal to 1. You can give the initializer above. That means you can configure the initializer above. So when you run this, when you configure this here, so you can see that, so this is also working fine. Suppose I will start with 5 and you can see that it is going to handle 5 to 10. So in a for loop, initializer is not mandatory. All are optional actually. Initializer is optional. In a for loop, condition also optional. Condition also optional. That means here I'm not defining the condition, but the definition for condition must be there. Remember, don't delete these semicolons, because so for loop actually, that is the basic syntax actually. It is expecting an initializer, but initializer we left empty. It is expecting a condition. Condition we left empty. Condition we left empty. So it is expecting and counter. Counter also we left empty. We left empty. That means everything is empty inside it. Everything is empty. Then how you can manage this? So you can simply manage this, right? Actually, what you can do is, so I is equal to 1. Okay, that is initializer. Then it comes into the for loop. So when it comes into the for loop, here we can check the condition. If I is greater than or equal to 10. If I is greater than or equal to 10, then break, then stop. Otherwise, print the value of I. And so that means I is equal to 1 actually. Okay. If it is greater than 10, so then stop. If not greater than 10, then print I. After printing I, increment I. You can define directly like this. That means a for loop can be configured so without counter, without condition, and without iterations. So initializer, everything is outside that. Now when I configured this, you can see that now again this is working from 1 to 9. So because it stops after equal to 10. If it is greater than 10, then the condition will define up to 10, right? So a for loop can be configured. A for loop can be configured. So without the initializer, without the conditions, it can be configured. So while dealing with for loop, these kind of questions are very common in interviews. You need to remember. So this is valid. Suppose I removed the definition for initialization and condition and all, and try to run this. That is invalid. That is invalid. There must be definition for initializer and condition. Mandatory. So then only the for loop will accept and it will use it. There must be definition for them. But the definition, you can keep it empty. You cannot simply write without them. Because that is the basic syntax of for. That is the basic syntax for loop. So while working with for loop, so this is one point you need to understand. Another important, generally, I hope, so you know that the for loop can have decrement, the counter decrementation. So how the counter can decrement for the for loop? We have for where I is equal to, it can have a decrement, I equal to 10, then I greater than or equal to 0, greater than or equal to 0, I minus minus, it can have a decrement. Document dot write, we are printing the value of I. That means the counter can have a decrement. So that means it is going to print the values. So it is going to print the values. And when it is going to print the values, it is going to deal the values in a reverse order. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6 like this. So if it is equal to 1, that is greater than or equal to 1, then it has to stop that here. That situation will be there. So it can have decrement. So gradually decrement. It can have a step value. It can have step value. Step value is I initially starts with suppose 0, I less than or equal to, so less than or equal to some 10, and here I can define I is equal to I plus 2, increment 2. That means the counter will increment for 2. The counter will increment for 2. The counter will display for 2. The step counter, you can define the increment for 2 and display the 2, right? So that means now the step counter will be like 0, 2, 4, 10, and that is. And loops can be nested. Loops can be nested. Nested loops, this is very important. And how a loop can be nested, how we configure the loops nested. That already I told you one example. So when we designed this here, so inside the for loop, we can define another for loop. That means there can be nested loops. When we learned about dynamically adding the data, so the nested iterations are very much important. Nested iterations are very much important. Let's see that, how we can use them, how we can configure them. So for example, that means the nested loops, how we define. It depends how you create. Already nested a loop inside another loop, that can be configured. And how we add this, how you define the loops into. So generally, for example, I'm configuring here a simple doc type HTML head, and title as nested loops. Okay, and here we have some body. In the body, we have an ordered list. So we have an ordered list, and the ID is just LST categories. That is the ID for ordered list. Now here I am defining a script, and here we declared a categories. Categories is an array. In the categories array, we have name as electronics, and inside that we have products. Products is again an array. This is little bit complex data. In this products we have TV, so we have mobile, that is in electronics category, and we have a name. This is a footwear, and in the footwear we have products like here Nike casuals, and we have like Lee boots. So this is the footwear. That means we are configuring. So we are configuring here a collection, and we need to add this collection. So, but here the point is, in this collection, we have name and we have products. Products is another collection. That means inside this collection, we need another collection to perform some iteration on that. So we are using some body load on load. So body load, and let's write the function. So body load. When body loads, so we need to add this into this categories. So first collect that LST categories is equal to document get element by ID LST categories. So we are writing an iteration here. For where I is equal to 0. So because array index number starts with 0, and I less than categories dot length, it will return the list of a count of all the categories, and I plus plus increment. Okay. Now what we need to do is, for every category, we need to create a list item. That means I am creating so a parent list item where, so here where parent li parent list item is equal to document dot create element li. We are creating a list item. Okay. This list item will contain the name property. That means parent li dot inner html is equal to list categories is array of I dot name. It will get the name. That means the category name is collected and the category name is displayed there. Okay. Now this must be added. List item must be parent list item must be added into LST categories. So LST categories dot append child. We have to add parent li. Parent list item must be added. Now you can see that this is going to add the parent items, electronics and footwear. But remember, here is after adding this, now inside this iteration, there is another products collection. That means we have to perform iteration on this products collection. Products collection is categories of I dot products. It is a collection. So we need to create another for loop. This for loop will have a different initializer. J is equal to 0. J less than categories of I dot products. It will perform iteration on products, and J plus plus. This performs iteration on that. Now what we have to do is, so we have to create we have to create an unordered list. So that means where, so ul is equal to document dot create element ul unordered list. Okay. Into this unordered list, we have to add a list item. That means where child li is equal to document dot create element. So li list item. This child li dot inner html. This child li must be, it must contain. So the value, it must contain the value of these products. That means what we have to do is, here we need to define. So child li inner html must be, so categories of I, in that products of j, that is how we need to configure. Categories I means it is 0. In the 0, it is products of j means 0. Categories 0 means first one, and in the products 0 means this first one, TV will come, and after that 1. After it finished, it will go to the second category. Now important, this child list item must be added into ul dot append child li child list item. After adding the list item to ul, this ul must be added to the parent list item, that means this is the parent list item. Into that we need to add this one. That means parent li dot append child, we have to use child list item. Child list item must be added into the parent list item. Then it gets you what you are looking for here. That means we need to save this here. So we are adding that into the parent li append child, and we are adding into that list item. So some problem. Okay. Here we have to add into the parent li, we have to add ul, unordered list must be added. This unordered list must be added into the parent list item. Then you can see it can get the details and display the details. Yep. Oh, some more issue is there. Let's check where it went wrong. Because in the iterations, we need to add this to the list item. Some problem is there, right? So problem is not there. Then we have problem in adding this here. Okay, let's see where is the problem in adding this. So the categories, okay. This is performing iteration, categories products dot length. It should perform iteration for the length. We are not adding the length, okay? Because products is an array. The products array length, up to the length we need to perform iteration. Okay, that is the point. Now it's working fine. So we are performing a nested iteration here, and we are adding the items and defining the items into it. We are configuring and defining the items into it. This is generally how you configure. This is generally how you configure the nested iterations. This is nested iterations. So majority, when you are attending interviews, these kind of logical tests are given to you. jQuery will make easy. jQuery is more faster and easy. But remember, in interviews, always you are tested in JavaScript only. Because jQuery can do this in a more simple way, which you will see. But in interviews, nobody will ask you in jQuery. They will ask you in JavaScript only. Why? Because they want to test your logical skills. They want you to test your logical skills, how strong you are in the logic. So how you can manage this kind of interactions dynamically. That makes a perfect developer actually. That is the reason you need to be strong in such kind of interactions, designing. So that means how we can access this data and add this data into this collection, So one more time, I will show you, observe here. One more time, we will see here. One more time, I'm explaining this. See, so we have the collection. Suppose the collection name is data. So data is having, suppose I will make it more clear. We have category. So data is having category, and the category is electronics and products. So data is having two properties, category property and products property. Category property contains category name. Products property contains again a collection. So we have to add that into this drop down list, into this ordered list, right? Into that ordered list, we need to add. First, we need to perform iteration on the data. Then we are writing for where I is equal to 0, I less than data dot length, I plus plus. That means we are performing iteration on this array. Okay, in that array, so we have to collect every category name and add into LST categories as list item. So, but it will have a child item also. That's the reason we are creating where parent li is equal to document dot create element li. So we are creating a list item. This parent li inner HTML, it will contain, so data, it will contain data of I dot category. It will contain the category name, and add this into LST categories. LST categories dot append child parent li is added. So first level category is added here. Now inside every category there are some products. So inside this we need another iteration where this time I cannot give again I because I is already there in the scope. J is equal to 0. So and j less than, so data of I dot products dot length and j plus plus. That means it will perform iteration of products. That means I of products means I means first category related products. Okay, and it should get the product names and print them, so and add them. So we will create a unordered list is equal to document dot create element ul unordered list. Okay, we will create a child list item, so document dot create element, so that is li. Okay, and child list item, so child list item dot inner HTML, it contains data of I dot products of j. This is nothing but, so first object, this is first object, the first object first value, first object first value, it will contain the first object first value. J is 0, it will get the first value. Okay, and this child list item must be added to unordered list. That means ul dot append child, so it should be added to child list item must be added. Okay, after this unordered list must be added to the parent list item. So that means parent list item dot append child, it will have that unordered list ul. So now this makes the design perfectly for us. Later, if you are adding different categories, and different options, then it will continue. That means it will perform the same and handle the same iteration. For example, suppose I'm adding one more category here. So I'm adding one more category here. So another category, so that is some fashion, and we have some products. So products, and it is an array. Some shirt is one, another one is jeans, like this, and it is going to add them automatically to your collection. This is how you can manage the nested iterations. Nested iteration. There can be any levels of nested iterations. This is very important to practice and important to understand these approaches, because this is what you need to be perfect to understand the logic. Okay, that is the looping controls, how we can manage. So that means nested iterations. So many questions I have given you here. That means, can we have a for without initializer? Yes, we can have an initializer. We can have. So we can have a for without condition. So we can have a for without counter, and we can have a for without without all. That means we can define without all, and for can have decrement, and for can have step, and for can have nested. These are the things we discussed all here. It can be nested. And another important is for can continue, and for can break. What is the purpose of continue and break? That means for can continue and for can break. So that is the intention here. So what is the intention of continue and break? How we can use them? So when we need to break, when we need to continue, this we need to understand. Generally, a loop can continue. So continue is nothing but whenever the condition matches, it will skip the counter. Skip the counter. It will skip the counter. For example, see. So let's create another one. So how we can skip the counter, and it is very important for performing filtering like options here. Performing filtering like options, configuring the filtering like options. For example, that is easy to understand and deal with actually. First, I will give you a basic overview. We have data. In the data, we are having name and some JBL speaker, something. And category is electronics. So it is electronics. Okay, that is the data. And we have another name, some Nike casuals, and the category is some footwear. Okay, and we have name, so that is some shirt, and this is in the category of fashion. Now here, so we have name and mobile, and the category as electronics. Now I want to display only electronic products. Then you remembered we learned about filter. We can use filter or find option. So filter or find option. Find will return only one. Filter will return multiple. But important here is I want to display both electronics and fashion. I want to display both electronics and fashion. Then see here, so I'm writing a function f1 and call the function. I am creating an iterator for where I is equal to 0, I less than data dot length and I plus plus. Okay. I want to print only the products that belongs to the category electronics and fashion. So electronics and fashion. I don't want footwear. That means whenever footwear comes, ignore whenever footwear comes. Then we can write the condition like this. If data data of I dot category, so dot category, if data of I category is equal to, so footwear is equal to footwear. If data dot category is footwear, then what to do? So continue simply continue is used for skipping the counter. It is used for skipping the counter. It skips the counter. Continue is for skipping the counter. That means wherever footwear comes, it will ignore, but it will not stop. It will ignore and proceed to next one. Then you can print the other details, the document dot write. So here I am printing the detail, like I want to print the name. So then I am printing here data of I dot name. I am printing the name, and I want to print its category also. So data of I dot category. We are printing the details. And let's put a BR line break here. And you can see that now what it will do is wherever footwear comes. So let's run this. Wherever footwear comes, it will ignore footwear and it will print only electronics and fashion. And you can see that it ignores that. I want to ignore both footwear and fashion. Then I can add my condition or, and I can say data of I dot category is equal to fashion. Then it is going to ignore both footwear and fashion, and it should display only these two, only electronics. That means whenever this occurs, we are defining continue. Whenever this occurs, we are saying continue. That means, so it will skip them, but it will not stop. It will continue to the next one. If the next one is also matching the condition, then again skip it. So that means continue is used to skip the counter. It skips the count and it will display only what you are looking for. So that is the intention of this continue inside the loops. So if the condition is matching, if you want to skip that counter and continue with others, you can use this continue. So this kind of filterings can be handled by using that continue. Currently, we are directly using them. Actually, we can pass these values dynamically. That means we can select such design I will create in the next levels, we will create them. That means we can filter directly by selecting, and it will display only those which you selected. So that you can manage by using this continue. So that is continuing the loop. Breaking the loop, already in previous example I showed you. Breaking the loop is nothing but if the condition is matching, then stop. In previous example already I given you, like, so username and passwords are verified. Username and passwords are checked. Username and mobile is verified. And if mobile and password is matching, then display success, otherwise error, and stop. Yesterday we saw how do we break. That means if it is matching, then stop. It should not continue, it should stop. That's already we saw in previous example how we can break, right? How we can configure and break. Terminating, right? How we can terminate that. For example, suppose, so we are configuring here. Let's put a simple, one more option I am showing you, break.html. Now here we are defining HTML. and head and title, say break, and here we are configuring, so the body, yeah, and we are defining a simple option, so field set with a legend, some say username. Okay, so we have a div, and we have input type is equal to text, and id is equal to txt name. Okay, and when user is typing some text here, so I will keep a div and id as msg. Okay, when user is typing the username, when user is typing the username, I need to verify, is this username already taken or not? If username is already taken, then I should say that it is taken, try another. If it is not, I should say it is available. We need to verify that. So because username may change for every character, one character change also username change. Then we write an event here. The event is, we write on key up. On key up, verify user. On key up indicates the actions to perform after every key is released. After every key is released. That means after every character it will verify. For every character it will verify. Okay, let's write a script here. The script function verify user. Okay, this is verify user, the function configuring the verify user function. And this verify user, so we are defining the approach, like, so first we have some data, so where data, in the data we already have some usernames, so we have username, so that is some username like John. Okay, so we have another username, so username like John12, and another username, so like some David, something like this, and another username. So these are the objects. Yeah. So username. So some like David underscore NIT, something like this. Now important, I need to verify that the username entered in the text box is matching with any username here. Then we need to define. So we need to define here. So first we need to collect the username entered in text box. Document get element by ID, txt name, dot value. Okay. We need to verify. So that means where MSG is equal to document get element by ID MSG. MSG is the location where we are displaying the message. Okay. And we are writing an iteration now for where I is equal to 0 and I less than. So users, so this is data, right? I less than data dot length and I plus plus. Okay, up to the end. We need to verify that username is matching with txt name or not. Then we are writing a condition if data of I dot username is matching with txt name. If it is matching with txt name, msg.inner.html, we will display username taken. We will display username taken. Try another. This message will be there. And I will put a font color as red. Font color as red. Okay. After displaying this, it should not continue. Then we will put a break. Break will terminate this execution. And it will stop the execution. When user types else, what it should display. So that means if the condition is satisfying, then msg.inner.html, it should display username available, username available. And I just put a font color as green. So green. So we are defining the font color as green. Okay. We can configure that. So single quote, double quote, anything doesn't matter. Already you know that, right? So here the point is this break is used to terminate the execution. And when username is available, it will display that username is available. You can see here now what happens is, so if I don't give break, what will happen? First verify that. If I don't give break, usually what happens now? I am typing here some David. He says username available. David, it's still there inside it. It's still there inside it. So it is not coming out of that. It is not coming out of that. That means it is still inside it. So that should not happen actually. That means it says username available. After username, suppose I'm defining break here. That means now what happens is when I enter David, username is available. When David, it's taken. It stops now. Actually, previously what happened after this, it entered into else. So that is the reason it is not stopping at this message. This message, it should stop. It should stop. Then we need to configure the break. We need to configure the break. So that means it stops at that particular location. Stops at that particular location. So then I entered David 1 is available. David is not available. Underscore is available. NIT, that is not available. It's taken. That means we are verifying from the data that we are having. And we are checking that. And for that, we are using a looping statement here. We are configuring a looping control state. And looping statement has two situations here, to continue and to break. Right? These are all the points about how we can manage the loops. These all are very important in further when you are learning other client-side programming and all. Right? Next, if you understand this, now you need to know about, so what is the difference between for, while, and do while, and what is iterators, how we can manage the iterators, right? That we will see in our next session, right? Today we have discussed all about for, various aspects of for. Then how do we use do while, and iterations? What is the difference between iteration and looping statements? So those we can see later. Then we can discuss about exception handling, and OOP concepts, object-oriented programming. We will go into OOP concepts of JavaScript so that we can get more idea on how we can handle this in our examples, right? Then tomorrow we will continue with this, okay? Right.